You know what? I don't care that my video just ended. I don't care. I'm going to continue doing this because I worked hard for this video. So it'll just be parts and this will be extra videos. So anyways, my number 5th palette that I ranked is my Mcgrath Berger palette. Right here. This is the first one. It is called the Diamond of the First Water palette. So pretty. I actually used the Plum Regalia shade, which you will see in my crease today. For some reason, this tablet is telling me how much time I have left, so I want to hurry. This blue shade is honestly what sold me on this palette. This palette is $65 and it is limited edition. I think that the baby motherships that are $65 that's the shade I used in the crease today. Much better, a much better like value than the bigger motherships. Even though I do have a bigger mothership, I actually have 2. I got Sublime. I just haven't used it because I got it literally yesterday in the mail. But this palette is amazing. I am not a fan of Bridgerton, but I am a fan of Pat Mcgrath, and I am a fan of getting my money's worth, and this is definitely worth my money. Okay, my number 6 palette is going to be a little bit of a cheaty one, but I wanted to include these, and that is the Jeffree Star Custom 9-Pan palette, and it looks like this. So this is a little bit cheaty because this is custom. I made this one myself, but so it has the colors I wanted in it, but I mean, it's still one of my palettes, so I wanted to include it. In the ranking, I think that for somebody that might love makeup, but maybe isn't like a makeup collector, say like me, a custom palette like this, a custom 9-pan palette would be perfect because you can get the colors you want, and they're all going to be colors you'll use. Like, whenever I want a pink look, I'm always reaching for this palette because I know that it has my favorite pinks and my favorite purple in it. See? So that's why this ranked up there, is because I love custom palettes. Okay, so number 7 is going to be my Jeffree Star Weirdo Palette right here. This is the unicorn. I love this palette. I'm very surprised how much I love this palette. Because when I first saw it, I got it just because, like, fear of missing out. I wanted all of Jeffree's collection. But I'm very, very surprised how much I absolutely love this palette. So if you like any of the shades in this palette, you can actually get them in singles. However, I think that he did a fantastic job with how he laid this palette out. Even though it's a little weird and it's definitely more on the grungy side, he definitely did an amazing job laying this palette out, because it's definitely a beginner-friendly to grungy colors palette safe. Like, I think it's beginner-friendly. And I'll show you why I think it's beginner-friendly. So this is the Weirdo palette swatched on my hands. You can see the quality is amazing. You have this more gray tone side. You have a dark grungy side. And then you have a warm tone grungy side that really is going to allow you to create so many different looks. Okay, so my number 8 palette is my Laura Lee Los Angeles Sleigh Belle palette. So this is probably a little surprising to people, but I absolutely love this palette. I know a lot of people didn't like this palette when it came out. It was a limited edition a few years ago. I still love it, and I still use it and love it. But I'm always super inspired whenever I use this palette. And that's the fun thing about makeup, is that makeup is different for everybody, honestly. And even though I don't think that this is a standalone palette, the colors that I'm about to swatch are so stunning. These bottom row, I mean, like, I love using these, especially this green. Like, that's so pretty. Like, look at that. It made me want to get the Candy Skies palette, but the problem I have with the Candy Skies palette is that it's sold out. But I love this palette. It's so stinking nice and so beautiful, honestly. Okay, so my number 9 palette is my ColourPop That's Taupe palette, and I think a lot of people love this palette. This is a very nice, stunningly gorgeous, cool tone palette. I just hauled this in April, so I haven't had a chance to use it all that much, but okay, I was just checking something. So I haven't had a chance to use it all that much, but it is still a nice palette. I think that ColourPop's formula is very nice for the price. You really can't beat ColourPop's formula. However, I have noticed that I have been getting a ton of really around the same tone of ColourPop shadows. Like I have Ballad, I think is what it's called, which is the 5-pan, and it's a cool tone, and it looks a lot like this. I also have the Stone Cold Fox palette because I really do love cool tones. I don't think that you are going to need to be like me and have all of them. I think that you could have either the Stone Cold Fox palette that retails for $35. That's a mega palette that's going to give you looks like this. The Ballad palette I think is like $12. It's a 5-pan that's going to give you looks like this. And then this I think is like $12 too. 15 maybe. And it's a 9-pan that's going to give you these colors. Okay, number 10 is my Jeffree Star Cosmetics Mini Breaker palette. It looks like this. I like this palette because I can do neutral looks. I've done neutral looks with this, and I can do colorful looks. I've done colorful looks with this. I think that this is not a by itself palette, but it is going to be, if you're only looking for 2 palettes, this could be one of your 2 palettes where you can make warm neutral looks or you can make very colorful looks and then have another palette, and then your collection would honestly be complete if you had it kind of like set up like that. I literally got this palette for Foreplay and Oral because Foreplay and Oral, yes, I see it, Kai, are only exclusive to this palette. Yes. This is a $28 palette. It is one of his minis, but it's still amazing quality. So this is honestly the last palette that I would consider my top. If I could only have 10 palettes, those would probably be my 10 palettes at this moment in my collection. Okay, we have entered the These Are Great collection, but I could do without them in my collection, which means they would probably get decluttered one day. Number 11 is going to be my Laura Lee Los Angeles Boss Babe palette. She doesn't make this anymore. This is a 6-pan. This is great quality. The only reason that it's not a top favorite is because I have these shades in other palettes. Okay, now I'm going to swatch the last 3. This just honestly, like, it's a good palette. It's just not a standout palette in my opinion to me. Okay, I had to take a diaper changing break. Sorry, guys. Number 12 is my Natasha Denona Star palette. And this is where it comes into play that I have to explain why. Because this is $169. It is a nice palette, and I actually used this palette the other day to create a look. It is gorgeous, and I think that if you got this palette or you were looking at this palette, you're gonna get a nice palette. The only problem that I have with this is that it's so expensive. And I could get these colors in another brand. I honestly, to God, could, at a way more affordable price. Now, the Star palette, Natasha Denona shadows blend themselves, and you really won't understand what I mean by that unless you have a Natasha Denona palette and you've used it. But they do blend themselves. They're so stunningly gorgeous. And they're definitely worth the price, but $169 is literally $50 cheaper than my car payment. So this is literally a car payment for some people. So I don't recommend Natasha Denona's palettes, especially not the Star palette, unless you can absolutely afford it. But if you do, and you can, it is stunning. You are going to get a great palette. Okay, so my number 13 palette is going to be the Pat McGrath Mothership 1 palette Subliminal. I do have the Mothership 2 Sublime. It's not in my collection yet, so it won't be in this video because I have to haul it at the end of the month because I just got it literally yesterday. And I'm excited to have it. But out of all the Mothership palettes, the one I liked the most was Subliminal. And it's because it's cool tone, and I love cool tones, and these are works of art. Now, I got this palette when her Motherships were $125. They are now $128. I have not had many chances to love on this palette, which is why it's ranking underneath of the Star palette. And I also think that you can do a lot more with the Star palette. You're going to get very cool toned looks with this palette. However, Pat has a very unique formula in these two shades right here that are at the end of her palette. And it's a formula that is only going to be found in Pat Mcgrath's brand. Now, what made me want this palette was that blue right there. That's stunning, stunning blue. So this palette could rank higher for some people, and it could rank higher for me in the future once I have a chance to love on it more. This might be a palette that I don't think I can live without. It's just because I haven't had a chance to actually do a lot with this palette and love on this palette that it's ranking where it's at, and that price tag. Okay, number 14 is going to be my ColourPop Aha Honey palette. So I have this one ranking where it's at because I have noticed that I was missing yellows in my collection. So I lusted for this palette so hardcore. And I finally got it, and only when I got it did I realize how uninspired I am to use yellows. It's very hard for me to use yellows and want to use them. And honest to God, I don't really use this palette very, very much. I thought I would because I really thought I was missing yellows in my collection, and I heard that this was a good dupe for the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette, and it might be, I don't know. But I don't have the Naked Honey. And I don't need the Naked Honey because due to this experience, I don't need to spend the $50 on that palette. This is like a $12 palette. I think if you get this palette, it's a good palette. It's up to really you. Okay, 15 is going to be my Pat Mcgrath and Bridgerton 2 palette. Again, I feel the same way about this one that I do with the other one. I'm not a fan of Bridgerton. Didn't care about it. But this is $65. Honey, Mickey will come right back on. And I think that the $65 is a lot better than her $128 price tag, honestly. And you're getting just as good quality. The only reason that this one is ranking lower is because I haven't had it that long. I actually got it last month, and I haven't had a chance to really use it that much. But I love the colors.